what if we told everybody in the room that there is a time now where we would showcase one of those real examples, projects that we have worked together on, and it'll be nice to not just learn from, but reflect and travel with us in this story. Yeah? Are you all ready to see what's in store? Yes? No?
Yes.
I see a couple of, okay, all right.
All right, our next segment brings exactly those stories to the stage. Real experiences, real challenges, and real examples and lessons from organizations that are navigating transformation.
To lead this conversation, I'm humbled and happy to welcome Bharti, our Head of Account Management and Consulting Delivery at MARG Business Transformation. She's an advanced cross-site change practitioner in MARG over the years. She has led organizations through successful transformations, managing delivery, building governance structures, resourcing strategies, and most importantly, coaching consultants on how this is done and to ensure that change actually lands.
And joining her are featured speakers, Kaushik Sanyal, Senior Principal OCM Lead at ITC Infotech, a transformational advisor with deep expertise spanning across program governance and value realization. Kaushik helps clients spanning multiple geographies and helps them lead their businesses through rapid change, from evolving operating models to disruptive technologies and cultural diversities. I'd also like to call on stage Krzysztof Oganowski. He's one of the world's most experienced ProSci advanced instructors for change management, whose career has been dedicated to helping organizations navigate complex transformation by bringing together strategy, change leadership, and business execution. Over to you, Bharat.
With that, our stage is set for Chapter 4, the field report, built, broken, and rebuilt. A transformation story from the field. Bharti, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So MARG works on multiple projects with clients directly, and for others, we partner with our clients to go to market. So this particular project, we've partnered with ITCI Infotech. So that's what this project is about. The three of us worked very closely in this project, and we faced the successes and challenges together, and we've seen it firsthand. So it's really special for me to be moderating this panel with these two panelists. So with that, let me hand over the mic to Kaushik, who will take us through a brief overview of the project.
Thank you, Bharti. Hope I'm audible. So this client of ours has a history of 125 odd years, headquartered in London, revenue of around 25 billion pounds, present in almost all the continents of the world, all the major markets in those continents. So you can imagine it's an institution, it's not just a company, right? And they have iconic brands in their portfolio. So, and from a business perspective, they're also trying to move from the traditional product range to a new age product range, so to speak. So that's from the business side. And we were working with the IT organization, which is called the Digital Business Services. They run large tech centers across the globe, across rather 4 major centers, in eastern part of the Europe and in Southeast Asia, and one in LATAM. And they have their, the IT organizations based out of there. So we were working with that digital business services group of that organization. And this change was emanated out of an operating model change. It was not a tech implementation. It was basically, they were trying to reinvent and, being more lean and agile in the ways of working. So we onboarded close to around 100 people from this organization onto our payrolls. And that's where we partnered, with Krzysztof, Bharti, and MARG, as such. And the change was implemented in Poland and Romania. These were the 2 tech centers which were in, scope where we had people on board. Now, when I started this whole journey, I thought that this would be one of the smoothest engagement of my career that I would have ever seen, because it's an iconic institution. When you walk into their headquarters in London, you will see consultants from the MBB firms, the Big Four. So very matured as an organization. They are pretty comfortable working with, consulting firms. And as an organization, they go continuous change, transformation throughout their entire, operating landscape. So I thought it would be a very simple and an easy change to work with. But lo and behold, that was not the actual experience. What I learned is that I'm not working with an institution, I'm not working with a brand, but I'm working with a set of people who have their own insecurities, their own willingness to look good within their ecosystem, and they have their own idiosyncrasies. So it was a very, very, very unique learning experience over these last close to a year, I would say. And so that's the whole backdrop, that's the background. Bharti, over to you now for more specifics.
Sure. Shrisha, would you like to add something?
Well, as Kaushik said, it seemed to be pretty simple project. And as a consultant, I learned one lesson that client will always surprise us. The question is not if, but when and on what. So I will later tell more about one surprise, but I believe that's the thing that being in this change management business, you need to be humble and you need to be careful. So I think that's what we had since the beginning. We were quite careful. We took some assumptions and we worked closely together. So I wanted to highlight that whatever you said, Kaushik, about the business part, I think the partnership we had and the fact that we meet here for the first time, we have never met in person during the project, and still we made it together. I think that's a great thing. So having common language on such project, it was very important. We'll probably later tell more about that, but I think the partnership and being careful, being attentive, and working together can really help you very much. Thank you.
Yes. So this was a complex global transition project where employees moved to ITCI. I think what worked well for us was the project management and the change management team working together really, really well and keeping at the center the experience of the impacted employees. So that was what we were always worried about. And I mean, the results speak for itself. We managed to retain at least 98% of the employees. So that's the business outcomes. And we worked across multiple geographies. I mean, there was Poland and Romania, and then there was, the change, the HR team was based out of London, and then the OCM lead was in India, so there was cross-cultural, aspects that we covered. So with that, my question to you, Kaushik, is, in a project like this, when do you think change management should ideally begin as compared to what actually happened in the project itself?
So we were in conversation with this client since October 2025. That's when the conversation started, and we knew that change will be a very critical piece in this whole ball game. But it's a mistake from our side as well as ITCI that we didn't onboard the change work stream, at the very beginning. The project kicked off sometime on the last week of January because Europe typically closes, in the mid of December till about mid of January. So that was the lull period, but I think somewhere we also underestimated the timing of onboarding of our work stream. We should have actually onboarded the change work stream sometime in late October or early November at the latest. But what happened was we onboarded the change work stream after January when Europe opened, when everybody came back to work, in the new year, and the execution really started at the end of January. So there was a very little, learning curve for our team because, it was a new team that we assembled. The challenge was very unique, and the entire set of workforce that we were transitioning onto us is a fairly complex, and they're all very experienced, resources, because the average experience band would be around 12 to 15 years. So you can imagine, these are all product owners, agile scrum masters, very senior domain consultants in retail CPG space, and, technical architects. So it was very complex, from a people perspective, the set of stakeholders that you were managing from an impact perspective, and your business stakeholders were also spread across, as you said, most of them were in UK. So So it took us some time to realize the gravity of the situation as to where we walked in. And it also took some time for us to read the room because it was all virtual. Although the team was on the ground, but most of us were virtual. So it was I mean, we faced turbulence and headwinds to start with, but yeah, we did stabilize and we quickly, thought on our feet in terms of, how we should implement, how we should go about it, because we did have a false start.
Thank you, Kaushik. So what I hear from Kaushik is that change management cannot be an afterthought, So it's better to integrate it right from the beginning, from the planning and the discovery phase, so that the adoption is built in, right? And I would also like to add that it also depends on the type of project that we are working in. So if it's a restructuring kind of a project where the solution design is already done, things are set, so why can't we plan change management right from the beginning, right? So that's it. So with that, Shishroff, my next question is to you. So MARG runs multiple projects across the globe and with the help of PROSI-approved partners. So you were leading this initiative for us in Poland and Romania, and we know that it was not all smooth sailing. We were not even having access to the impacted employees from the beginning, and that was a huge constraint for the team. So how did the team actually work around this in practice?
Yeah, that's a good point. How many of you consider yourself as change practitioners? Other people, please raise your hands and keep them for a while. Yeah, something like 20, 30 people. So I hope it will resonate even more operationally with you, the answer for the question, because there is tiny little thing. It may seem like a little thing, being able to have a conversation with people who are impacted, having word from them directly, not indirectly. That's why we were just onboarded to be where the change happens, in Bucharest, in Warsaw. And in fact, we assumed, never assume, please do, never assume, that's my lesson learned several times, we assumed happy path. Because as you said, Kaushik, this is a matured organization for which ITCI works. And ITCI is also an international organization, well established. So we assumed that change means something, and it means the same what we thought. So for example, we also assumed in this package, Happy Path, that we will have access to impacted employees since day one. Because then the first question from the client is usually, show me the plan. Where is your plan? And I try never to respond to that directly with a plan, but with approach how to get to the right plan. Because that was in some of the previous conversation, that ability to identify the right question, the right problem that we solve is the most important. So here, we faced this thing that we were rejected to have direct access to employees. As Kaushik, you said, there were some internal factors, there were some other projects happening in the background that impacted how stakeholders felt. Yet, we haven't been able to go directly and to do what we were asked for, just in fact from the beginning, be there where the change happens. So, yes, indeed, we made some workarounds. We were working closely with the project team that had some echoes from project meetings, also with people impacted. We were trying to approach people by the town halls whenever we were there a few times during the project. We used to reach to some people we knew from individual conversations before the project, like in Bucharest, in Poland, we had consultants who knew some individuals. We also were talking to sponsors, we were talking to HR business partners, and still we try to make a triangulation of information that we were taking and we are receiving. So based on that, we made some actions. Based on that, we introduced more support from sponsors. Based on that, we introduced different maybe way of communicating the project, different way of interacting. Based on that, we introduced some cultural awareness sessions, some managerial preparation briefings. But that was based on some assumptions. And it would have been much better if we just do it with direct contact with employees. So for me, the lesson from this would be never assume, again, the lesson would be to clarify since the beginning, what is the governance? What is the RACI here, even for simple things? Even if it might have seemed too simple. It's never too simple as long as it's not done yet. And I would say also we should have been working even closer together within ITCI with the project team to make sure that still we have this access since the beginning. So my conclusion is that in change management, and this is example, you very often use workarounds. But those workarounds are not that necessary. They consume energy of people, and they force us to base on assumptions that may be a bit false. So that's why I believe for the next project I will be more determined to just start with this good access to employees. And also I would like to ask, how many people in this room consider themselves as business leaders? Please raise your hands. Who consider as business leaders? Yeah, so a bit less than the previous group. I believe my kind request to all business leaders would be, and whenever I would start a next project, would be, if you employ people for something as external or internal experts, you employ them not to tell them what to do, but you employ them so that they tell you what to do. With being humble, of course, and realistic. And for business leaders, I would say it would be a better use of their time, of your time, to use your resources you employ to tell you what to do and just to follow it. I would like to finish with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shishko. I think what stands out is that the team did not wait for direct access, but worked around indirect systems to, find solutions. And one point with which both Kaushik and Christoph made, that organizational maturity is not actually change management maturity, right? And change management can deliver its full value only when it's given the access and the mandate to do so. I mean, only then change management will flourish, right? So with that, Kaushik, my next question to you is, what if we had not done change management in this project? I mean, do you really think any outcomes would have changed?
Outcomes would have drastically changed because this was a top-down mandate that was handed over to the impacted employees, right? Those people didn't ask for it. They were told that this is happening to you, and this was immediately after the New Year's celebration, right? 2026, 24th of January, I can't forget this date. Rather 14th of January, sorry, I can't forget this date, when everybody was called in Bucharest and Warsaw, and they were told that, you're no longer be on our payrolls, but you will be on the payrolls of a partner, and that happens to be ITCI. So it was a bolt from the blue from their perspective. So how did we manage to, and then, so this is one dimension of the problem. The second dimension of the problem was the client itself. So it's like this, right? So you have a problem, you do your Google research or you do your chat GPT, and you analyze your entire problem, and then you go to a doctor and you tell the doctor that, look, I have an issue and I have done detailed research on what my problem is. I have come to you so that you can give me a prescribed medicine, because I can't go to a chemist and buy those medicines myself because he needs a prescription. So I'm telling you what my problem is, just give me the medicine. I'm also going to tell you what the medicine you need to prescribe to me. So just write it down and give it to me so that I can go and buy and treat myself. So that was my client. So he exactly knew what he wants to get done from us, and he knew change more than the subject matter experts themselves. So these were the two very critical dimensions of the issue that we're dealing with. One, we had a very, very complex group of people who were told that your employment status is changing. And on the other hand, the client was saying that, look, I will lead this change for you and you do what I'm telling you to do. Don't apply your mind. So that was 24th of January, and 4th of May is when the actual transition happened. So the payroll transfer happened and they physically moved from the company A to company B. So these 4.5, 5 months, Shishtoff and I, the way we partnered, the way we worked, we discovered a new model called Prosci Lite, because you cannot have walked the entire 9 yards of Prosci, all the 3 phases. So the way we turned around was a case study in itself. And our team was also very, very new to all of us, right? I mean, Shishtoff's team was, anyway, he knew the team well, but for me to lead that team, somebody who's who's a Polish national, who's a Romanian national. The only thing that worked in our favor was customer was always a North Star. We always worked for the client. We always worked for those impacted people. And the other good thing was we knew the change management language very well. We knew what we were trying to achieve. We knew what we were trying to set as a target, and what are we working towards. So those are some of the things that really worked well in our favor. And I think we were able to turn it around, with that kind of a focus in mind.
Thanks, Kaushik.
I confirm.
I think what Kaushik spoke about brings Prosci research to life, right? So we know that projects with excellent change management, I mean, the probability of them meeting or exceeding project objectives is 7 times more higher. And I think Kaushik's answer just reflects exactly that for me. So, yeah. And with this, okay, so next question is to Shristoff. So we spoke about transitions, we spoke about resistance. The only thing that we didn't speak about as per the theme is AI. So let me ask you a question on AI. So, what are the trends for change management in your market in the context of AI transformations?
Yes, today you open the fridge and AI pops up, of course. No, but this is the conference. I believe for this context, it's good to say that there are good examples and bad examples. So bad example is a company named Klarna. Maybe you heard about it. It's a financial organization that replaced customer service people, 700 people, with AI. And the CEO, by the way, Polish native, this is a Scandinavian company, he said, every process, every job in my company can be replaced with AI. And then a couple of years later, he had to just admit that it was not right. So Klarna had to re-employ some people on different contracts, yet still they encountered a lot of problems with untypical customer questions. So bots could do well the volume, but they couldn't handle quality. That's why the company really experienced a lot of problems after announcing big financial success, and they needed to rehire some people, but on different contracts. So this case shows that it was not total failure, but it was not enough prepared. So in the context of change management, we may say that the impact was not analyzed, and the whole project could have been designed totally differently. Still, it was a huge risk, and it could have turned out as a failure totally. On the other side, you have companies like IKEA, again, very public case, I think you might have heard about it. When they introduced their chatbot Billy, instead of firing some of the customer care representatives, they retrained something like 8,500 people for interior design consulting. They trained them on some other things also, like remote sales and complex problem solving, because when people call a company like IKEA for anything like an advisory, they need some thorough approach. And still, those people were not fired. They generated something like 1.5 billion almost dollars additional revenue, and bots handled something like 50% of requests, those simple requests. So that's a success. And another good success, a good story, is Rolls-Royce, that was leveraging on the very old model, power by the hour, which was invented in '62, but was very costly for Rolls-Royce. And Rolls-Royce in the domain of airline engine manufacturing, which is super complex thing, and only a couple of companies in the world can do it effectively. So with AI, with better preventive maintenance, with better tools to detect what could happen with the engine in a week, in 2 weeks, in a month, they redesigned the business model, because the customer pays them now for availability of planes, not just for the engine. So it totally changes the business model. They were successful. They don't give ROI data. They don't give financial data about the impact, but definitely the impact is on planes availability, on cost of maintenance, and on all the customer experience factors. So these are kind of stories in companies. Still, when you put it into numbers, into big statistics, you can say that in 2025, Eurostat gives this data for 25, only 20% on average of European company bigger than 10 people used AI. I don't mean people having ChatGPT, but just used for business purpose. But the difference was that it was 50% of large enterprises and 17% of small companies. So that's one thing. Then second thing is that we had a big issue with regulations in Europe. I mean, on a good side, on a bad side. Maybe for AI, regulation is another topic. It will be needed somehow, globally. But generally, in business in Europe, regulations are slowing us down and increasing costs tremendously. I believe all those of your companies that run operations in Europe, you experience those compliance and regulations stuff. Some are justified, some are not. But then, Europe is shifting now from regulations towards investment. Just 2 days before I arrived here, on Thursday last week, European Commission announced building 7 gigafactories, $30 billion or euro investment, so it's very big as for Europe. So we shift from regulation to implementation. And also, companies are scaling up AI, going from pilots to scaling up. Everybody realizes there is business value there, not in multiple pilots only. And last but not least, there is more and more conversation about change management in AI. Like, people need to adopt new ways of working. We need to redesign organization, we need to redesign business model, and we need some tools for that, some models, some concepts for that, which is change management. Probably we'll talk later in the capability panel about that, but that's a big shift also. And in the light of our conversation, what you mentioned, Kaushik, about mature organization or not mature, they still start understanding that with AI, they will not go far if they don't go with people capability too. So that's basically the answer for the question.
Thanks,
Bharti.
Shroff.
Over to you.
I think we saw in the morning debate poll also, the audience did vote for the people first, right? So in a world where AI is constantly evolving, I think the human side at least needs to remain constant. I mean, we cannot really control, how fast technology changes, but we can at least build our people, readiness of our people for that change, right? So with that, I think we are running short of time. So we'll have 2 questions from the audience.
I see more hands than 2, but I don't know how you manage that.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Antra, and I'm also an OCM consultant, so I think you guys are best poised to answer some of the questions that I face. So in the example that you mentioned, given the constraints that you are operating with the client, did you have time or scope to have like a proper structured resistance management script or like a template that you could figure out and work? And if not, how can you convince a client, or how can you show the value of something like that?
So the first day of our engagement was 24th of January. I'll give you the dates. 14th of January, the announcement was made. 24th of January, we physically, started to work with the client. That was the first call that we had with the client, and the client said that, look, I need a project plan in next 1 week's time. So trust me, we didn't have time to do all of this we wanted to do, and that's why I gave that doctor and a patient analogy, right? So when you go to a doctor, the doctor does scan you, and then, then basis the reports that comes out, he prescribes you a treatment plan. But we didn't have any of those luxuries because the client said that, I know what the problem is. I'm doing a favor to you by not letting you meet my people because they're all very disgruntled. So the moment you go and meet them, all you will find is resistance, and more resistance. So I'm doing a favor to you. I'm telling you, you talk to me and I'll guide you on what needs to be done. And just follow my footsteps is what the mandate we got from the client. So we flipped the script from there on, and what we said is that, so the biggest takeaway that we got from that meeting was the client did say that they don't know about ITC Infotech as a customer as they would know about, say, Capgemini or Accenture or IBM, for example, because those are all companies that are more well-known from a brand perspective. So we flipped the script and we started a comprehensive communication plan. We planned for that, and we told the impacted employees in terms of what's in it for you, why you should look at ITC Infotech as a potential employer, what is it that you can get from there, why it's a career shift that will work in your favor, so on and so forth. So there was a very scientific and a sustained plan that was devised in terms of communicating them, hand-holding them, and bringing them on board slowly but surely, and that worked in our favor. And that's why you see that 98% success rate. So we went the other way around rather than going through a proper diagnostic and a change readiness assessment and all of that. We didn't do any of that. So we went the other way around. We basically took the cue from what the client want, and then we slowly started to weave in some of the stuff that we wanted to do in between, and that's how we proceeded on this engagement.
Also, if I may add one thing, Kaushik, to what you mentioned. Of course, we had our playbooks and we had our best practices, but we just had to keep them for ourselves and just use whatever client allowed to do. And I believe that sometimes you just do first what client wants, and then you can do what they really need. So in this case, that was also the fact.
I would also like to add that we do a time stealth change management. So it's not really the clients don't know we are doing change management, and we are actually doing the change management from behind the scenes, right? So it's not necessary that they need to know.
So we had a target date actually. We knew that 4th of May is the cutover date, right? So that's when the people will come on board onto our payrolls. So we had only time from say 24th of January till 4th of May. So we had to weave our magic in this particular time frame, and we did to the best of our ability. Hope I answer your question.
And just one last question that we can take. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Nitesh. So I'm a transformation leader and a change management expert as well. I believe in Kubler-Ross curve. So Kubler-Ross curve of change says that any change management goes through, first a denial, frustration, depression, then it goes to decision and integration adoption. So during the first phase of, until denial to depression, I see the maximum noise coming up. People deny and they complain a lot, and so does the leadership. So communication is the key. So based on your experience during this first initial phase, after you go live or you announce a change, when people start reacting, any measures or any playbook that we should follow that, the noise or the confusion during that phase is reduced, or any best practices that you follow?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good question, because the noise will be there anyway, and you admitted it's natural flow of how people behave. So some organizations tend to neglect it, though, because they say, don't ask, because you will learn if you ask questions. And it's like neglecting the reality. So it's better maybe to enter inside this noise and try to understand what are the root causes. Because sometimes the root causes may be very trivial. And sometimes you can remove them very easily. And for example, what could cause the friction is the behavior of managers, direct supervisors, the behavior of business leaders. So I would say I would start with those two groups to make sure that earlier, and then what Kaushik said, we might have been maybe involved earlier, but the reality proved that it was not the case. They could have been prepared a bit earlier so that they have not spreading out, the darkness with the speed of light within the team. That's why I believe that could be very important. Regardless of any playbook, I would say I would just take care of them so that they can take care of the people first.
Yeah, the biggest lesson that I learned from this particular engagement was that any transformation or any change of this nature where you have multi-geography, multicultural kind of an engagement, it either succeeds or fails with one conversation, one behavior, one action at a time. So you have to be very careful in terms of what your North Star is, what the problem you're trying to solve, for whom are you trying to solve, is he in the center of your thought process, and are you doing the right thing? So that's very important for you. All these methodology, framework, the tools is a part of your kitchen. That should be only available to you. But when you're talking with the client, when you're talking with the impacted employees, he or she should be in the center of your conversation, and you're doing it for him or her. As long as you remember that, you should be fine. So that's something that I've learned, because otherwise, in the first meeting, I was thinking that I will show him the PCT model, I'll show him the 7S and so forth. We had Krish also on the call, and nothing really worked. So that was a rude awakening, and that's how I learned that, what is it that we need to do differently, and I think we came out pretty unscathed at the end of the day. So we did two change, actually, one with the impacted employees, and we changed the client also. Now he's a good friend. He talks of Mexico's not so good World Cup campaign. He's a Mexican, by the way. Lives in the UK, but we've become good friends now. So that's the whole journey that we traveled.
I think, Kaushik, listening to you, I have some other ideas open, but of course we don't have time. So please, if anybody of you have a question and you haven't been satisfied with the answer, just approach us after the panel. We are happy to discuss later. So just wanted to mention this. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. I would just want to leave all of you with one thought. For a long time, change management practitioners were the ones who were beating the drum rolls for getting a seat at the table, for change management. But now, as MARG, as all expert panelists, we hear a lot more people talking about change management. Lot more projects are also involving change management right from the beginning. And we also are seeing a lot of opportunities for change managers as a career. So, but I would just like to end saying that that's a clear indication that change management is coming of age. So thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kaushik and Christoph. Thank you.
Thank you, Bharati, Christoph, and Kaushik. What makes three leaders exceptional is when you actually reflect how it got built, what broke during the process, and the ability to figure out, have the turnaround. And you three shared so beautifully the insights that you saw on the field, and thank you so much for that. May I request Bharati to felicitate our panelists. Kaushik Sanyal, Senior Principal, Christoph Oganowski. Kaushik Sanyal, Senior Principal, OCM Lead at ITC Infotech.